It's time again for the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with Dr. John Dentico. The mission of our podcast is to provide 21st century leadership training for a talent-driven world. We help organizations implement strategies and practices designed to attract, hire, engage, and retain top talent while mitigating the effects of burnout. Our guests are experts in various fields of organizational dynamics, including, but not limited to, leadership, management, communication, and coaching. They bring a world of knowledge and solutions to our viewers and listeners. I am sincerely grateful for their participation and ideas. So let's dive in. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We genuinely appreciate your support. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is Dr. Benah Parker. Dr. Parker is a leadership development expert, executive performance coach, and social psychologist who is well known for keeping her clients moving the needle on desired outcomes. Whether the goal is organizational transformation, professional growth, or personal development, Benah integrates applied psychology to help high-performing leaders and their teams hit the targets that others can't even see. Her mindful approach to executive coaching, along with her authenticity, empathy, and passion for impacting the greater good, make Dr. Parker a highly sought-after partner for top leaders. With her proven methodology, Dr. Parker provides insights and solutions to facilitate long-term changes that lead to improved engagement, productivity, and impact. And I am truly pleased to have her with me here today on the podcast. Hello, Benah. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. I'm glad you're here. Benah, let me ask you this question. I was thinking about this a few minutes ago. In terms of the things that you see that crop up often, the things that, in a sense, as a coach, keep people up at night. Give me three things that you see, three issues that you see that are always coming up all the time in your work.
I think the things I see a lot are leaders who have been very successful. They know how to do the things that they know how to do. They're already strong leaders, and yet they find themselves staying awake at night, burned out, overwhelmed, exhausted, because they're giving so much of themselves to do the things that they know need to be done and that they want to do, but also in part because they've jumped through the hoops to be successful, and they're suddenly finding that success isn't necessarily what they expected to look like. They went to school, they got the degree, they got the job, they got the promotion, they started the family, all these things, and they look around and go, I did all the things I was supposed to do, but where is that fulfillment? Where is that passion? Where is that inspiration that I had a decade or so ago in my job? So I think that lack of the idea of showing up of what they believe a leader is supposed to be, and then there's that gap between what the true act of leadership actually feels like, and understanding how much of themselves is pouring into this role, and then they forget to actually rebuild that part of themselves that is excited about the job. And all of that then leads to the disconnect. It leads to the burnout. It leads to thinking, I'm working myself to the bone, but what is the reward for me?
Very interesting. I'm spending a lot of time these days on burnout.
Yeah.
On the strategies to avoid or mitigate burnout. It's become a real focal point of what I'm concentrating on. And when I started several months ago to really think about this, I came at it from the leadership perspective. In other words, what is the implication of the particular model of leadership as it relates to burnout? And I think you've said it absolutely perfectly. And that is, we put so much onto leaders to be the, dare I say it, Jedi Knights of the organization, to swoop in, light the sword, and vanquish the problems and issues that face us, that we forget or don't realize how much pressure is placed upon them. And that is not my model of leadership at all. I'll tell you that right now. Because I look at leadership as a collaborative process. I put a line in the sand between leader development and leadership practice and action.
Yeah.
Okay. And the idea being that leadership, this is a John Dentico coined phrase. Here it comes. Leadership is what people do together. It's about creating a sense of a movement where everybody is coming along and everybody shares in the responsibility and in getting things done. I'd love your reflection on that.
I love that approach. I remember in one of my first leadership roles, when the first time I was managing a team of people, when I met with them, I said, okay, as my leader, my job is to be both your foundation and your umbrella. I want to make sure that you have everything you need to do your job well. So my job as a leader is to advocate for you, to represent our team and our goals within the larger organization, to make sure you have access to the resources, the people, the training that you need to be successful, but also to protect you from the politics, the games that might be played. It was a very large organization, so there was a lot of history there. But I was like, my job as a leader isn't to just tell you what to do in your job. Yes, it's to help identify gaps and look for opportunities of improvement, but it's to make sure you have what you need and to give you the space to grow your expertise and to shine in your role and to look for opportunities to get you to your next level as well, while we're still contributing what the organization needs and what the company needs from us and what do our stakeholders and our clients and those need from this particular team as well. So this idea that leadership is what we do together, I am all in on that.
I appreciate. I see everybody when we talk about leadership, and we talk about almost creating a perfect person. Do you have the right traits?
Yeah.
Do you have enough charisma? Do you have all these magical things? I bumped into a site. I tell this story all the time. I bumped into a site that had the 57 traits of a leader, and I said, "What happens if I only got 46? Am I like out the door? Am I done?" You can only saddle an individual with so many expectations. And I think the more we do that, the more we're going to get leaders, good people, burned out.
Oh, for sure.
So let me ask you this question. In your work, let's say you deal with someone who's up front and personal, as they say, with burnout. What do you tell them to do? Do you have any mitigation strategies, any things that you tell them, say this can help you get through this?
Yeah, I work with a lot of leaders that are experiencing burnout. And when I'm talking with them, I remember a recent conversation I had where a leader was saying, if I don't do this thing, it's just not going to get done. And I let him continue his conversation. I said, okay, but you had a belief statement there. You have worked into your team that if you're not there overseeing these things, that they're just not going to do it. And that may or may not be true. But at the same time, as a leader, your job isn't to do their jobs. Your job is to empower them and allow them to do their jobs. And if they fail, yes, hold them accountable. But you have pulled onto yourself this belief that it's needed. And there may be evidence to that. So I'm not in that role in that moment. But at the same time, one of the biggest steps to recovering from burnout and hopefully even preventing it is helping leaders see how important boundaries are. And not just setting those boundaries, but letting people know what they are and then figuring out ways to stick to those boundaries in the way that feels authentic to the leader and also doesn't decimate what the goals that they're working towards in their organization. We love to say setting boundaries and sticking to them. And at the same time, yes, fires come up. There's going to be something that needs your attention. But if you treat everything like it's on fire, then nothing is actually important. If everything's important, then nothing is, right? So I think there's a thing I love to talk about when people put out these fires, because my dad was a firefighter. I grew up in a house of firefighting. My mom was for a while too. So I'm close to firefighters. And when people jump from one fire to the next, it's really empowering. It feels really rewarding to be, like you said, that Jedi Knight, that person that comes in and solves the problem. But not every fire has to be put out. We have candles for a reason. We have bonfires for a reason. Some fires are very functional. And yet as a leader, when you sit in this place of saying, oh, it's one fire after the next, and I'm here to save the day, and I'm here to put these fires out, my biggest thing is not all of these fires are yours to put out. Some people you need to delegate and have somebody else practice their firefighting skills. But also step back and go, oh, that fire, I saw a flicker of flame over there. Maybe that's just a candle. maybe that's there to light the way of where we want to go or to show a way that we want to avoid. And we let that burn because it's a controlled burn. You talk to anybody who's been an actual firefighter, they light some fires on purpose. You talk to a wildfire firefighter, they're going to light some fires on purpose because that's a controlled burn and it keeps the big fire from spreading out of control. So when people think, oh, I just have to put out all these fires and I jump from one fire to the next, that's how you get to burnout. Those fires will burn leaders out. It will burn teams out. It will burn an entire organization out. But not every fire has to be responded to in the exact same way.
Right. When you talk, going back just for a second to this Jedi Knight thing, I was doing a presentation the other day, and I said to people, you have to understand, a 21st century leader is probably not a Jedi Knight anymore. They're more like Yoda. That's their job. And what did Yoda do? Put the challenges before the people, before Luke. He let him go through the different phases of learning and development, and just, you're the one that's going to get this done. I'm here to show you the way and get you ready. That's, for me, it's a funny model, if you will, to say to the 21st century leader's job is to create this environment where people come to do their best work every day.
Absolutely.
And if you can do that and not take it all upon yourself, not be the hero or the heroine, you just not be the hero and say, listen, I've got to create this movement of people to take the organization into the future. I think that makes so much more sense to me. And you're right. There are people, as you well know, coming from the firefighter community who love to fight fires.
They do.
And they have somehow connected their personal worth to being the ace firefighter, recognizing that you can't fight a 3-alarm by yourself. And if I could use that metaphor, borrow it just for a second, you got to get everybody else involved in this operation. You just can't do it. But there are those, as you will, that somehow are trying to measure up to some fantasized sense of worth that if they don't, they somehow have failed or become less than what they need to be. And I'm so sad and so hurtful to people. But anyway, we'll move on to the next question.
Sure.
Here's a question for you. Do you see leadership as a function of position? Or can anyone exert influence, can anyone exert influence no matter where they sit in the organization? I love to ask this question.
It's a great question.
In the end, you have to make a determination as to who owns leadership.
I think it's a great question. I absolutely do not think you have to have a title to be a leader. I think there are so many people who are just natural leaders. And a lot of times people don't necessarily choose to be a leader. It's simply the way they show up authentically in a space, the way they communicate, the way they share with vulnerability, show up with empathy, those types of things. People want to be around them and people want their thoughts, their insights, and they want to follow them. So I absolutely think you can be a leader anywhere in an organization. And sometimes you find out who your leaders are because they're showing up in a way that might be toxic and they're bringing a team down. You wouldn't necessarily choose that person to be a leader, but they're leading with their energy and their communication styles, and they can influence a team for sure. And at the same time, when somebody does have that title, when they do have that stage of being in a leadership position, I think there's a lot more responsibility when it's an intentionally stepping into that leadership space too.
Yeah, I agree. The first part of my leadership is an influence relationship that engenders safety, trust, and commitment.
Yeah.
So if you have those, that's the beginning of it. And we call these people the go-to people. Go-to people. And they're not necessarily, usually are not, the senior people in the organization.
Right.
But they're people who have, quote unquote, maybe corporate knowledge. They've been around for a while, and they possess the magic. And the magic to me is trust.
Yeah.
They're trusted. And so I'd like to ask you that particular question. Let's use that as a lead into the next question. And that simply is, how important do you think trust is in organizations today?
Trust is incredibly important. And it's one of those things, it's interesting because a lot of people say, oh, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And to one extent, depending on your worldview, I prefer to give people the benefit of the doubt. And yet at the same time, if somebody erodes that trust or challenges that trust, it can be very hard to earn it back. But I think being able to trust your leaders is an incredibly important step to be able to move a team, move an organization, move whatever the group is forward.
Yeah, I become a proponent of something I call mutual trust.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'll explain what that is. See, many times it's, do the people trust the leader? Okay, so that's one direction. The second direction is, does the leader trust the people? Okay, so that's people say there's more streets here. And that is the group. If you take a group of 10 people, the question is, do they trust one another?
Correct.
We forget that every organization is a system and a system of systems. And there can be a breakdown in some place in the system that has a relative effect on the rest of the system. So to me, is the magic, the transcendent value, as I like to describe it. And it comes from doing things, what I call subjective intended actions. They're subjective intended act. You have to go out and build trust.
Yeah.
You have to call someone and have a cup of coffee with them and sit down with them and say, and even I was saying this to people the other day. I said, even on Zoom, you can get a cup of coffee on Zoom and call the person at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. They have a cup of coffee. You're still having a cup of coffee,
Absolutely.
but it just happens to be on Zoom. You can do these kinds of things, but you can build that relationship. You can build that trust one person at a time. So I think it's absolutely important.
I agree.
I want to, any reflection on that?
No, I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, so let's talk about burnout. Let me go back to burnout. I was talking to another coach. Her name is Joy Meserve. She's in Los Angeles. And we were talking about the effect that coaching can have on burnout. And her point was simply this. Sometimes people need to vent. They just need to get it off their chest. I'd like to hear some thoughts from you about that. How do you feel about the intersection or the intervention, if you will, of coaching on alleviating some of the issues associated with burnout?
I think having a coach can absolutely support somebody coming out of burnout. And it's funny because I was speaking with a new client a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, yeah, earlier in my career, I was working with a great leader and he had a coach. And I always wondered, he had told himself that when he reached a certain level of leadership, he was going to get himself a coach, because in this previous employer he had worked with, he had really admired this leader and he knew that leader had a coach. And he had gone to him at one point and he said, you're such a great leader. We all love to follow you. You're so inspiring. Why do you have a coach? You clearly don't need to be coached in how to be a leader. And his boss told him, he's, no, I'm a great leader because I have a coach, because I can take all of the stress of the day-to-day or these challenges, and the coach is my sounding board. This is a place that I can go vent about something or talk through an idea. And here's a third party who just goes, oh, did you... and this is what I say I always do with my clients. I'm there to shine a spotlight on your blind spots. Yes, there are some places where I'm going to help somebody develop leadership skills, but a lot of the people I work with, they're already leaders. They know what they're doing. I'm not there to tell them, oh, here's how you do active listening. That's not why they're coming to me. But it is to shine a spotlight on those blind spots, to go, oh, you come in and you're challenged with this person on your team or this strategic initiative that's going forward. You think you've communicated it really well, but here I am to go, oh, did you take into account the fact that the people you're leading are actual humans that have their own challenges or struggles? So you come in and say, I was clear, I was concise, I gave deliverables. Why aren't they doing the thing? And as a coach, I get to come in and go, maybe you think you communicate it this way, but let's try this other thing. Here's another activity. Or what, maybe you have these beliefs about what you've asked the team and you have some assumptions there. And these light bulbs go off and they go, oh, wait, I did have assumptions. And here's the thing you can do differently. But one of the other things that I think as a coach really helps with burnout, I always think it's so interesting when I'm working with a client who is recovering from burnout and they're sharing with me what they're focusing on, what they're doing. So much of the time, it's my role is simply giving them permission to be human. I can't tell you how many times that somebody will say something like, oh, but I shouldn't do it. I'm like, why shouldn't you? Like, why shouldn't you take this time to actually enjoy your life? And they go, oh, yeah, no, I needed somebody to remind me that I'm allowed to do that I'm allowed to be that human, because they've internalized for themselves what they believe a leader is expected to do. And it's all, to some extent, it's performative. Sure, that's what your team needs to see from you, but that doesn't mean you're not allowed to do these things behind the scenes or for yourself. And by the way, let your team know you're doing them, because what you're modeling for them, they're picking up and they're getting burned out too. But if you can show them how important this balance is, or these boundaries are, or this moment of self-care, which doesn't just mean going and get a spa day, but actually taking time to yourself to rebuild from a big launch or to celebrate these things that you've achieved, all of that is going to help you not only enjoy your role more as a leader, but it's going to help your team want to see you as a human and want to follow you, because they're then able to take care of their needs as well. So I think coaching can absolutely help burnout in quite a few different ways.
On several of my podcast guests, we spent a number of hours talking about vulnerability and authenticity and the ability to share your human side. There's something, I don't want you to see me as a human being. Oh, goodness. Why? Because that connects us.
Yeah.
That connects us. We're not machines. That connects us. I was trying to think earlier the name of this book, and I remembered it. I remember the author. Over 30 years ago, I read this book called Quiet Desperation, The Truth About Successful Men, written by a psychologist named Jan Halpern. And it was it was like opening a book of secrets.
Yeah.
And she, to the points that you've made so far, she was right on the money. That at least and again, she wrote it about men, but from a man's perspective, how much they had to sacrifice, their personal sacrifices to be the company guy, to be the company man, so to speak. So I just wanted to reflect on that for a second, because this is a recurring theme. It's not like these are the kinds of things that continue to move on. I know you're getting close to your hard stop here, so I'm just going to ask you my favorite last question. But before I do that, I want to preface one thought.
Yeah.
And that is, I had to travel to the other side of the planet to have a podcast with a gent by the name of Nick. He lived in America for about, I think, 14 years and then emigrated back to India. He's written a book on working with Gen Z. Okay. And so we're talking about, and he says to me, John, you have to understand that meaning is the new money. That people are looking for meaning in their lives. People want to matter. They want their work to matter. I'd love to get your reflection on that, of how important meaning is in the workplace today.
I think meaning is so incredibly important. And I kind of love, I'm raising a couple of Gen Z kids. So I love that the influence of the younger generations, I think, is really opening the doors. My Gen Z, myself, of people being able to say, it's really okay to have wants and needs and desires outside of work. We grow up thinking, oh, the first thing you do when you meet somebody is, oh, so what do you do? And you ask people about their jobs, and this idea that we are whole people inside our jobs and outside of our jobs. Because people go, oh, you're a whole person outside of work, but at work you are this title, this role, this. I'm like, we are whole people all the time. And whole people have needs outside of, yes, we want to pay our bills. Yes, we want to give back to our communities. All of these things are important. But finding that meaning in our day-to-day, and sometimes that meaning is just a simple connection with somebody. Sometimes it's having a bigger impact. But knowing that the more we're able to bring that need for meaning, I think it's going to make it all so much more rewarding for us. And I know it sounds a little woo-woo and hopey or whatever, but I love the idea of, from the top down and bottom up, being able to say what we do matters. And in the day-to-day, it might just be, okay, I'm just selling this thing. That's not a big deal. But you're selling that thing because you're making a connection. You're solving a problem. You're showing up for the humans that are engaged in that interaction and seeing each other as humans. I think that's how we change the world.
I absolutely agree. And as a boomer, I can speak and say, meaning's always meant something to us. It's just been layered differently. It's there. It's probably about 2-3 layers down in the cake. Whereas today in the Gen Zers, it's really the first layer, the top layer. So I absolutely agree. I know I'm going to ask you one quick question.
Sure.
You get one. This is the 2-minute drill, as they call it. You ready? Okay. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing in the world that you see, or in your practice and the people that you work with, what would that thing be?
That one thing you said, the two key words, authenticity and vulnerability. That magic wand would allow people to show up in that way, to be able to embrace who they are as whole people and stop the judging, stop the jumping into stories about what something means, recognizing that we control those stories that we tell ourselves. And that most of the time, if you think, oh, if I show up this way, somebody's going to think something about me, you don't control what that person thinks. So show up the way you want to show up. They're going to think whatever they want to think anyway.
That's right. I always tell people, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I care what I think.
Exactly.
So I absolutely agree with you. Listen, Benah, you've been great. I appreciate your time today. I wish you all the success in the future. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a blast.
Thanks so much.